Hello. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? Give me a second here. I'm live streaming for the first time. Welcome to the Effective with Nelson video podcast. So this is going to be an interesting weekly series, and we'll talk more a little bit about what this series is about in a second. But we're here definitely for technical artists, Houdini TDs, effects TDs, and we'll talk about all things that are interesting, at least to me, as a CG technical artist, and that's in line with my goal to really help people create more, earn more, and live more on this YouTube channel. So if you have comments or topics that you'd like for me to sort of cover, leave them in the comments below. And since this is my very first live stream, please expect everything to mess up. And I'm still trying to figure out things. But here's what today's format is going to look like. We're going to spend the first about 15 minutes just going through some teaching, some topics, and we will be covering the very exciting Karma renderer that has gone into production and has dropped its beta flag in Houdini 19. So we will be using Houdini 19 today, and we'll just go a little bit into how to start using Karma, start getting your toes dipped into Karma, and then we'll take a look at if they we'll then talk about a little bit about what this new video podcast format is all about, etc., etc. And finally, if there are any questions from the live audience or from the effective community posts, well, we'll go and address them. We'll try to address some of those questions. All right, sound good? So, all right, let's jump into then our quick, just 15 minutes of teaching this morning, and let's go right in. So what we're going to talk about this morning is really, this is Houdini 19. So for those of you, it's pretty new, right? I think it was October 27th or 28th that they launched it. So for those of you who have not tried it out, highly encourage you to go download it and try it out. And with Houdini 19 now, we have a new Karma renderer. I mean, it's been around since Houdini 18, but it's dropped its beta flag, like I mentioned before, and now it's production ready. So with a production ready renderer, what do we do? I mean, the first question I actually want to address, and maybe, let's get back here a little bit more, is, why Karma? Why talk about Karma? Well, I already mentioned it's now production ready, so it makes sense to talk about Karma. But it's also faster, and I get lots of questions about, people asking me, should I use Mantra? Should I go look for some other renderer? Because Mantra is a little bit slow. And Mantra isn't the fastest renderer out there for sure. But it is a very solid, robust renderer. And if you're an FX TD, if you have an FX TD and you've worked in big productions, that big productions are still using Mantra because it is such a solid renderer and so tightly integrated into Houdini. You can do anything with Mantra. Yes, it is a little bit slower. So if you're a solo artist, if you are trying to do things on your own, it may take a little bit longer to render. So a lot of people are looking for faster options. There are lots of other options out there, but Karma is great because it's faster than Mantra, and it's kind of free. Well, if you can consider that free, it comes with Houdini, so you can't beat a renderer that comes with Houdini. And more importantly, Side Effects is investing heavily in Karma. So it really is sort of the future. And the way to go, in my opinion. So yeah, let's take a look here. Oh, hey, Saugut BG. Hi, welcome to the live stream. So let's talk about, there's a lot of confusion, I guess, between Karma and Solaris. And Karma is a renderer that uses USD. So you have to really keep that in mind. If you've used Mantra before, you know that Mantra writes out .ifd files, and those are really scene description files. Not very different from what a .hip file is or a .myascii file. Those are files that describe what is in a scene so that the software that you're using knows how to either display it on the viewport or render it out. What's really different about Karma is Karma doesn't have its own unique scene description. It uses the open source Pixar universal scene description to describe its scene. And so because of that, it's actually very powerful in many regards. Mantra used to be something that's only available in Houdini, and currently Karma is only available in Houdini. Well, actually, not really. You can use it. They've demoed it that you can actually see it in the the USD Hydra viewer, etc. You can render it outside of Houdini. So there's now this open feature for Karma to be used in any DCC application out there as well. But what is Solaris? Or sometimes, Houdini users like to call them LOPs, the LOPs context for lighting operators. Basically what it is it is a new, well, again, it's not new. It's been around since 2018, but fairly new. Compared to what we used to use is, it's a node-based procedural lighting layout, lighting/layout framework that sort of wraps around USD. So USD is highly technical. It has a lot of features. It does a lot of things, but everything in USD is like written in Python or C++. If you want to use it, it's not very convenient. So think of it as SideFX has sort of created this entire interface around it that is, what SideFX is really good at, which is procedural node-based solutions around USD. And what the challenge that we have right now is that USD takes time to learn. There's a lot of concepts involved in USD. And that's probably the reason why a lot of people have not adopted Karma quite yet, because you have to first wrap your brain around, I don't know, 20 pages of USD docs or something like that. But people want to use the faster Karma. So, the challenge is how to get into Karma without trying to get through 20 pages of USD docs. And so that's hopefully what we are going to cover here today, to talk about, getting into Karma basics, getting your toes wet in Karma. So let's jump right into Houdini right now. So there are sort of three ways to use Karma, and the first way is sort of really the basic LOPs way. And you can go into LOPs simply by going to stage, right? And when you're in the stage mode, you can create stuff in LOPs. And you can, actually, before we do that, let me just jump into the object mode. And let's, create our usual geometry. So let's call this dragon. And let's drop a file node. And in our file node, let's look for a file. Okay, so I downloaded this dragon scan from the 3D scan store. And it's super dense. So I remashed it and I cleaned it up. And now it's it's still fairly dense, I would say. It's, but it's okay. It's about 150,000 polys, all primitives. So you can see this is the mesh. And so there you go. There we have our mesh, and let's go through what would be maybe the standard, the most basic LOPs way. Well, the first thing is you want to bring in stuff, and you want to remember that when you go into LOPs or Stage or Solaris, everything here operates in USD. So when I do if I want to bring my dragon into Solaris, into LOPs, I would have to do an import. So I would do a SOP import here, and there are all kinds of, there's a SOP create. You can also create inside it, but let's just focus on the SOP import. And with the SOP import, and let me just hide this and bring this out instead, because I think this makes more sense. Or it's easier for you guys to read. From here, you can now, figure out the SOP that you want to import. And so we'll import the dragon, and you hit accept. And there you go. We have our dragon. Now, the other thing that a lot of people will find very convenient is, and I got to find my camera sort of, sorry, my camera sort of blocking my thing here. But we will, a lot of people find convenient is to just jump into the Solaris, build, and you will have a whole bunch of Solaris details in here. So what happens when I import this into Solaris? A bunch of things happen. And one of it is it essentially converts this, which is in sort of the surface operator land, into, this is now sort of a USD format, right? So with USD format, let's, what can we do? Pretty much just like our object context, what will we do next? Let's create a light. So let's create a light. And you can create an environment light, a whatever light, and we can drop in a dome light or an environment light. Looks a little bit different here. Don't get too scared about all of this, but most of it is pretty much the same. So let's define an HDRI map maybe, and let's just pick the default Houdini skylit garage HDRI map. And there we go. We have an HDRI map. And we can just use a simple merge and say, hey, let's merge the dragon and the lights together. And you can see now I have, if I visualize the merge node, I have sort of this dragon, and now I see my HDRI map. We probably also want to, create some materials here. And you can definitely create materials inside of here, and you would then, what you would do is you create a material library, right? And you can wire it depending on your conceptually how you look at it. I like to wire it before the lighting, because I assign materials before lighting. I don't know. Conceptually, at least, that's how it goes. So, and then we can just assign, the basic principal shader. We can put a principal shader here. And I think all of this still pretty much applies. So if you like a gold, let's call this gold shader instead. Now, nothing has happened here with the material library. Our dragon still hasn't got any of that material yet. So, I think you can actually drag and drop it here. And you can assign, set material on mesh 0, or you can set the material on SOP import 1 component. So if you look right over here, the compose scene graph, there's mesh 0, and mesh, you can think of it as the actual geometry, the primitives, and the SOP import is sort of the, if you're familiar with Maya, sort of the transform or the group right above it. So you can choose either. Let's just put it at the SOP import level, and there you go. We have it, and that's one way of assigning materials. And when you do that, it automatically creates an assign material node, which you can let it be here, or you can wire it up here as well. That's perfectly fine. And then here we go. Now we have this. And, some of you may ask, oh, how about cameras? Well, same way, like just go ahead, create a camera. Now you have a camera. You can, your cameras can be kind of similar here. You lock them in here. Oh, sorry. I think I created more than one camera. So let's go through this camera. It's locked. We can kind of position it, and there you go. We have a camera. Now, with this camera, you can do the same thing, like if you want to, you can just merge this such that you can have merge followed by camera, and then you wire this out, and then you view the merge. This is also another way that will work. If you like to separate your lights, cameras, and materials out, you can use these merge nodes to kind of format them that way. One thing you want to note, though, for sure, is that when you create this camera and this dome light and all, these are USD lights and USD cameras. They are different from when you create cameras and lights in the OBJ mode. Okay, so just take note of that. Very similar, in many respects, but fundamentally, under the hood, it's represented as a USD camera, a USD dome light. So remember, I told you that Solaris is the node-based procedural, representation of USD. Yes, this is exactly what it is. When you create a dome light here, you created a USD dome light, a USD camera, and this is what you're doing. And there you go. Now, how do you activate Karma rendering? A little bit different if you are very familiar with Mantra is that you go to the perspective, and now instead of Houdini GL, you just swap to Karma. And there you go. It takes a second, but Karma resolves. So that's the most basic, and you've already got Karma, and Karma is already rendering. You can also put a Karma node right at the end. This is probably the easiest way to get to most of the Karma settings, and it's available here. So if you did not want such a high res, if you wanted something like just something even lower res than that, you can go 640 by 480, and the render gets much faster to resolve, 5 seconds compared to HD TV here, right? And some things that may have changed with Karma now is that you no longer have like pixel samples where it's 3 by 3 compared to Mantra. It's now just combined into one single pixel sample. And maybe in a bit of time we can compare the render speeds. But I found that for very, very basic stuff, the render speeds is about 30% faster. Yeah. And then you have all of your, usual stuff. So this is the most basic way that you would probably light and render with Karma LOPs. Okay. So now let's go into another way that we might do this. And that is, something that maybe we're a little bit more familiar with. We like to create our cameras, and let's go back to our build. Okay. And hey, we like to create our cameras with, what we're familiar with. So we are back in the SOP context, the object context. And we just created another camera. And let's call this my SOP, or my OBJ cam. And so this is a Houdini object camera. Again, I'm going to create a environment light. This is a Houdini environment light, not a USD one. I'm going to do the same thing here. And now let's assign a material, the way we are typically familiar with materials. We can just hit N there, and we can go into materials and drop the same principle shader. principal shader. Okay. And, we'll do the same thing. Let's give it gold. Just call this gold once more. All of this very familiar workflow, right? And then just assign the gold material. Boom. Looks different, but this is viewport rendering, okay? So with Houdini 19, they have now introduced in the stage the ability to do a scene. Well, they had it before, but this is much. It used to be very finicky and it broke a lot of things. But Side Effects with Houdini 19 has really tried to make this a much a much easier way of doing things. So you can do like scene import, and you can just import the cameras, or you can import everything: lights, cameras, materials, everything. So let's just drop the scene import all. And we're going to import the entire OBJ context. And you can see it's brought everything in already. And I'm going to use the same Karma node now, right over here, and change this to Karma. And take a second, but there you go. And we can make use of the object camera as well. Notice, though, that I feel the materials look pretty different. Look at that. The material looks like different, even though technically I created the exact same material, but it looks different. So something to definitely check out. Oh, hey, Mathia, welcome. No problem. Welcome and to the first ever effective live stream. Yeah, we're just for those of you who are joining us late, we're just going through the differences, the different ways that you can use Karma in Houdini 19 right now. And we've talked about how you can use, we talked about some really basic LOP nodes to create a really basic LOP rendering. None of this, I mean, if you're going to get more complex, you got to invest more time into learning USD and all. But hopefully this is just a quick primer to get you into this whole Solaris USD thing. But now we also showed you how you can make use in Houdini 19 now of the much improved scene import node. And you can still build your scenes in object context with all of your favorite methods and object cameras and environment. You don't have to use USD cameras, USD lights. You don't have to use any of that. And you can just import all and then bring that in. And then it looks like, I don't know what's that. This is strange. Let's see if we can restart the render. What did I do here? Did I do something wrong? Let's see. I don't think I changed anything too crazy. Object context. Let's go back to stage, and let's turn back on Karma. Let's put our object camera. Okay, fine. We have to be looking through that object camera. But what we were mentioning is that your materials look very different. Even though I just created the same exact principal shader, materials look pretty different, right? I don't know. I like the new scene import stuff. So this is probably what a lot of people will be doing, is just kind of using this. At least at the beginning, this would be a really good way to sort of get into Karma. There's one more way that I'd like to introduce to y'all, and that's if you go into the out context. I'm going to stop this, pause the render, and go back to Houdini GL mode. And in Houdini 19, Houdini has included a comma ROP. Yes, a comma ROP. And this comma ROP looks a little bit different than our mantra ROP, our beloved mantra ROP. In a sense, but it's got very similar stuff still. So with the karma ROP, we can use it to basically render. And you can do karma viewport, and it will create a sort of a viewport render, which you can then use. And you can also, let's go to here. Let's pick dog camera. Let's pick our object camera, and this is going to be our object camera here. And let's take a look again. So you can use your camera viewport. Oh, my goodness. This is fun. When you get a crash in the middle of a demo. Let's see if we can recover that, shall we? Wow. That's the thing with live streams. I think, when it comes to non-live streams, everything kind of works perfectly, and you can mitigate all of your technical issues. But when you do a live stream, that's pretty much what happens. Let's try to recover that crash file. Let's save. Okay, I think we are back in business there. Oh, well. So here we go. Let's look at Karma viewport rendering. So now this is our Karma viewport renderer, and we can change this to Karma. And this is, I guess it sort of replaces our old render view here. And you can see we've got this rendering and this gold scene with everything 1280 by 720. It's about 16 seconds. Okay. And some of you already, I think, are like asking, oh, how does that compare with Mantra? Okay, let's do a quick comparison with Mantra. Let's make use of the same object camera. And with the same object camera, and everything's pretty much the same, right? Except now we are using Mantra. And let's go to our render to mplay, this current scene. I don't think we changed anything much. Just everything just defaults, right? Let's just hit render to mplay. Allow access. So this is about, I'm going to guess it's probably about 30 seconds. Okay, 24 seconds. So compared to what we had here is about 16 seconds. So no, a good almost 10 seconds. Obviously, I think, to compare apples to apples, I should probably just do another test where I render to mplay. So if we render to mplay from Karma and see how long that takes, that might be a better test. So there we go, about 15 seconds versus mantra 24. And the result is kind of similar. So that's actually been sort of my experience as well, is that in general, for most simple things, it's about, it's about 30 to 40% faster. So I think it's worth considering Karma. So I showed you a couple of this new stuff. Maybe another time we can go a little bit more into materials, but the principal shader is still going to be your Uber shader. We now have Material X as well. Material X standard surface is also a new Uber shader that side effects say is potentially going to be the future of the way they're doing shaders here. So definitely, feel free to try that out. Or another separate session, we can cover materials and Material X. But I wanted to go through quickly in the out context, some of the in the Solaris LOP stage, some of the most basic stuff that we do. And one of the most basic things that we do is we actually, these are all of the standard render settings. You get your pixel samples, you get your render settings, what is your image, the camera that you're going to pick. Your resolution now is, you can specify them here. This one's pretty cool. If this is Karma XPU is in alpha, so use it with caution. I see some people complaining about what it can or cannot do on the forums, but it's in alpha, so give it a chance. It does a lot, and it's actually pretty fast. So look at this. This is, it's pretty fast. And if I, this is not what this is if I looked at it in camera view, right? But if we moved it around, it's resolving pretty quickly. Not to say it doesn't resolve quickly in Karma engine. It also resolves, in my opinion, very quickly in Karma CPU. So it's really good for look development. Like I mentioned, the pixel samples is over here. So instead of 3 by 3, now you just multiply it out. It's already 9. If you want 6 by 6, I guess it'll be about 36 samples. And this can go like pretty high. I think some people go to like 100 plus to resolve stuff. And again, with the CPU, it's pretty fast. And my CPU, for the record, isn't like a blazing fast CPU. It's like a my CPU is a Ryzen 9 30. Sorry, my CPU is a Ryzen 3950X, and my GPU is 2070 Super. So it's not one of those super expensive stuff out there, and I think it's still pretty fast, right? So there we go. Let's bring it back to the defaults. Again, all of your render samplings, the volume step rate, this, especially if you're rendering volumes, this is one of my favorite. I don't know what happened to stochastic samples. Maybe it's no longer there. We'll see. Limits have changed a fair bit. Now you can see reflection limits and refraction limits are no longer 10-10. They're like 4-4. Diffuse limit is 1. So these are all governing secondary bounce rays. And then motion blur, depth of field are all now in here and enabled by default. And you can check on velocity blur. Very similar stuff from Mantra, geometry, scaling. These are all things that we use very frequently. Image output, they no longer call them image planes. It's now called AOVs, which is actually pretty much the standard convention in the industry, AOVs, because I think RenderMan first started arbitrary output variables. So, or quote unquote render vars, because USD uses the term render vars for AOVs. Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of trying to equate two types of things together, two basically same concepts called differently. And for those of you who are wondering where is your different standard AOVs, combined reflection, all of that, it's here. Your volume, combined volume. So that's there. And you can still specify extra render AOVs in there. But those are a little bit more advanced topics. We can cover them at another point in time. And pretty much I'm still learning it myself. Oh, and if we are using Karma XPU, a lot of people like to use the NVIDIA optics denoiser, which makes it even faster at resolving, obviously. So, but yeah. So, those are, your deep outputs here, your advanced, these are, familiar stuff if you've used Mantra. But the big question here, which we use all often, is how do we do holdouts? Like, how do we say that this mats that, or this is, we want this in the scene, but we don't want it rendered in the visible primary rays. Well, this Karma node is not going to do it for you. But if we look at the Karma ROP, you can see that under the Karma ROP, it has objects here. They are very familiar, just like Mantra. And so you can still use these in there. If you're interested in terms of how to do that inside of the LOP context, one quick way is just dive into the Karma ROP. And if I didn't mention it, Karma ROP is basically a lightweight wrapper around Solaris, really. So you can see they imported, they fetched the USD render ROP, and inside there's a LOPnet, which is a Solaris network, basically. And you can see they are bringing in the cameras, they are bringing in the objects in the scene, they're bringing any candidate objects, they're bringing in the lights here, and then right over here, they are doing the matte objects. So you can actually see how they configure this, and it's just ease of use. They configure this, they edit the visibility of it, and set a bunch of render geometry settings for the matte context and all. And same thing for the phantom objects, and then they go down to Karma. So this, I believe, this workflow will continue to improve with Houdini 19, because as you can see, that's a lot of steps to set up. If you are just trying to set up the basic, what things need to be matted out or phantom objects, that's a lot to set up for a network. And so it's good that they provide this. And I think probably the easiest way that people are going to gain access right now to Karma is to use the Karma ROP. So that is, something that for really simple stuff, easy stuff, for, that's probably what I would do, unless I want to go into all of that USD stuff. Or unless there is particular things about the USD lights, the Solaris setup that I really want to use, Karma ROP is probably your easiest way to get into it. And once you get familiar with it and you want to learn more about USD, then I recommend you get into Solaris, try out some simple setups the first setup that I showed you, and then figure out things along the way. All right. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If it has been helpful for you guys, please let me know in the comments below. If there's anything that maybe I didn't quite cover that you would like for me to cover in the future, any topics or any questions, please let me know in the comments, and I'd love to address them. All right. In the meantime, I wanted to, we can just talk a little bit about what is the Effective with Nelson video podcast about. Well, it's going to be a weekly live video podcast. At least that's what I hope it's going to be. It's going to be a live weekly video podcast where I hope to do about 15 minutes. Obviously, today I did a little bit more, much more than that. 15 minutes of teaching, um, or maybe interviews. We'll see. I haven't lined up anybody to interview, just because we're still getting this whole live setup going. And I thank you for all of you who are very patient. With I'm sure I'll get better and better with this whole live setup. So it'll be about 15 minutes of teaching. We'll talk about all things to do with skills as an aspiring technical director, an effects artist, a technical artist, and mindsets. That I always think that mindsets are pretty much more important than skills in many respects. Skills get you in the door. Mindsets really help you to thrive. And we'll talk about careers. We'll talk about, what is your CG, how do we progress as CG artists in our CG journey? And really, it's also for myself to kind of be accountable and to myself, and to sort of constantly be creating and making stuff for you all. We're going to do some Q&A. If, there are questions, we'll do Q&As. And so if you have any questions and you can't attend the live stream, definitely check out the Effective community. And you can get to it from, I think, nelsonlim.com/effective. And that should direct you to our Effective community. It's a community of aspiring effects artists, Houdini artists, technical artists. And over there, we just kind of encourage each other and spur each other on. And in that community as well, I do a post each week where if you can't come on live, but you have questions, feel free to post your questions there. And we will, I will look through those questions and I'll address them on the live show. And then we hang out, sometimes maybe we hang out, or we'll see what we can do. And a lot of people say, why would I want to do this? Well, a lot of people, not like there's a lot of people. Some people ask or are curious, why am I doing this? And I really want to show up more. I want to show up more for you guys. Video editing is a bit of a pain and it takes a while to video edit, but live shows, you don't really need to do quite as much video editing. So yeah. And it's really, I really want to get to know you guys. I really, really want to get to know you guys. So don't be a stranger, and please just say hello. And thank you, Mathia. Thank you for saying that. And I do look forward to the next ones, and I hope you can continue to join us. Thank you for your support. This is fantastic. Yeah, I will forever remember you as one of my first live streaming audience, and for your support. So here's let me, before we sort of end off, I want to make sure that I addressed the Q&A section of the live stream podcast, and we do have a question. All right, so let's check out the question here. The question is by Josh, and Josh says, I assume Karma XPU uses either CPU or GPU. Are the results identical from either processor, or are certain features and passes missing? So very good question, Josh. Let's answer that. So yes, you're right. Karma XPU is not called Karma GPU because Karma XPU uses both your CPU and your GPU to get you really quick results. And so far, I mean, I've shown you a little bit of it, and it's blazing fast. Actually, when we switch between the both of them, they look pretty much identical. Now, are they one for one such that you can render half of your sequence in CPU and then the other half in XPU? No, I think you might notice some amounts of artifacts, but I think if you can, and that's not the goal. That is not the goal that side effects has, unlike I think it was Arnold. I think it's Arnold that has a goal for pixel to pixel replication between Arnold GPU and Arnold CPU. And I haven't used Arnold's GPU a lot. So if you have used Arnold GPU, any one of you out there who has used Arnold GPU a lot can tell me whether they have achieved that goal of pixel to pixel accuracy, parity. I think it's an extremely hard job to do, but it would be exciting if they have done that. And again, that's not the goal of side effects' Karma XPU. Right now, I would say Karma XPU is really good as you're trying to look dev, you're trying to get quick renders, but you're not trying to hit the final renders just yet for your stuff. And you want to get quick renders, you can use Karma XPU to help you with that. And then when you want to go to more higher quality renders, final renders, or when you're pushing your scene to insane levels of complexity, switch over to Karma CPU. And you know that Karma CPU will be able to handle it and do it. And you know that the looks are pretty much the same. Are there differences? So there you go. I think I've addressed whether the results are identical or not. Are there certain features or passes missing? Yes, absolutely. So Karma XPU is in alpha phase, and already people are telling me stuff like, I'm hearing stuff like Karma XPU doesn't render particles. Doesn't render particles. It doesn't render particles straight out of the box. I think you have to instance spheres onto them with pack primitives or something like that. I haven't tried it myself, so I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure, but that's what I hear. Karma XPU supports volumes, yes. So, you can do some amount of volumetric rendering there. Most of the surface shader stuff, yes. It does not support, as far as I know right now, it doesn't support subsurface scattering. So if you need subsurface scattering, don't use Karma XPU. It's not ready yet. It's in alpha stage. So hopefully by the next release, Karma XPU will be production. That's a hope, right? That's a hope we can all have. Yeah, so if you need anything to do with subsurface scattering, don't use Karma XPU for that. And again, it's in alpha stage, so I would not use it for a production. I would not use it for a client project. I would use it for my own fun stuff, for my own personal artwork, where I know the limitations around it, or when I'm exploring the limitations around Karma XPU. But it is very exciting, and I think they have given us enough meat to play with. Karma XPU is not like a handicapped renderer, and you can definitely check out, I think Houdini Hive Adam Swab has done a pretty good video that I'm checking out myself too on the Karma XPU and Material X. If you want to get more information about Karma XPU and Material X, definitely check that out. Karma XPU is only going to work with, it does work with the principal shader to some extent, but I think it's very much geared to Material X. So yeah, I hope that addresses the questions. And I don't think we have any more questions. Let me just make sure we don't. And yeah, so pretty exciting. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me on this live stream. I want to see, like, thank you so much, Mattia and Salgat BG. If you're still there, I hope I'm not massacring your name. And please leave your comments below if you have topics that you would love for me to cover in the future. I'll probably try to slice this video up into smaller pieces and release them as sort of more concise videos themselves. So expect that to come out. And lastly, if you love this stuff, please join us in the Effective community. Again, once again, it's nelsonlim.com/effective. Join us there, and I hope to see you there. And we can talk all things Houdini, effects, technical art, CG, and I think we'll have a ball, and we'll be able to support each other. All right. So thank you very much, guys. And, oh, thank you, Daniel. Oh, I have to feature you guys, Daniel. Daniel, thanks so much for showing up. Matthew, thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next one. All right, guys, take care. Bye-bye.